and what it does. So starting at the navbar, we've dynamically displayed the different categories and their child categories. And if you click on them, it displays, as you would expect it to, the different kinds of news within that category. Also, nice little animation underneath where the border comes in using a transition. Also, we've displayed the category name at the top here. It allows for people to know where they are. And on the right-hand side of the nav, we've got our search bar, which works as you would expect. If you type in a letter or a word, whichever it may be, if it is included within any of these posts, it will be displayed, the title. If you input something incorrectly, as in there's no available posts, you get a little error message coming from the top, and then you get an error page. Going back to the home page, as you can see, we've got a little preloader that we use for while the page is loading. We implemented that with a bit of JavaScript. And then we've got the carousel, which rotates through our different entertainment images. 3 different images there, and they've all been laid out in such a way that they are not too stretched. And also, when you make the screen a bit smaller, when it gets to a certain point, it changes its height. So once again, it looks a bit better. And even better if you go to the phone screen kind of size. As you can see, we get rid of the Jumbotron altogether, and you're left only with the cards and the posts themselves. Also, little burger at the top with all the parts of the navbar that were there beforehand. And if we go down, we can see that all of the posts are displayed in such a way that when you make the screen smaller, it still looks correct. So it's displayed using Flex, and when you using App Media as well. Also, you may have noticed that the navbar has got a nifty little bit of JavaScript using an event listener for when it scrolls down, that the opacity changes and a box shadow is added. At the bottom, we have got a YouTube video, and finally our different pages at the bottom, which if you click on them, takes you to the different pages as you'd expect using permalink. So if you go onto any of our different posts, it's all animated using hover effects basically, and then we use a keyframes animation to load up each page with, first of all, the title, then the content, and then the images. It just looks nice, I think. So starting at the header page, we've got some basic boilerplate stuff at the top, and this page is going to be used with every single web page on our site. This is our custom walker that we've created. It's just some information that we're going to use for the categories. We'll go into more detail in the functions tab. The preloader that we spoke about earlier on, using the template directory to get the GIF from our image folder. And we go down a little bit further. This is all just information for the nav itself. Nothing particularly complicated until we get down to the PHP. This is how it's going to display the different categories, and this is how it's going to display the child elements. Going on to the functions tab, if we start at the very top, so we link to the CSS and the JavaScript here, and then we execute that command here. And then we go into a little bit more detail with our custom walker category that we spoke about in the header. So this code here basically just creates it for us. This little bit of code here is how it's going to be displayed in the URL and how the WordPress is going to interpret it more or less. This part here is how the parent elements are going to look and how it's going to create a drop down for those parent elements to display the child elements, which are in here. And this just ends that piece of code. The 404 page, come here when you input a URL which is incorrect, and this is what you get. Nice and easy, nothing too complicated, and away home there. So onto the index page. At the top, we've got the get header. You may have noticed it along the way so far. This is just implementing the PHP that we put in the header from before onto every page that we use. This piece of PHP determines where we're going to be getting our carousel images from, and we're going to be getting it from category number 8, which is our entertainment category. We found this out by looking on the WordPress. So this creates the loop for displaying these images, and going a little bit further down, these are the images themselves. It's pulling it using PHP from our WordPress and displaying the images alongside a link to the post. We've got 2 different image types. You've got jumbo and image for each post. One is so that you can display it on the carousel, a nice different image, and then you've actually got the image for the post when you go in a little bit further. We also display the title as a caption so people know what they're looking at when they look at our carousel. And then we create another loop to display all of our cards on the web page. Very similar thing to what we did a moment ago. The only thing noteworthy worth mentioning is that we did not use the content. We just used a custom field, like we did to display the images, to display a brief overview of what each post is about. Finally, at the bottom of our index page, we've got our YouTube video that we've embedded. Really simple stuff using an iframe and the link. So page.php is the same fundamentally as the single customs in terms of layout, the only difference being that this is a page. They're also all laid out in a very similar way because they use this main part of the class. Now we give different words after the word main so that we can actually style the color and various different elements in slightly different ways. So very simple. Displays all of the post metadata as necessary alongside the title, and the content is going to be the same for each one of them. Worth mentioning that we've used loops to display all of this, and also these little bits of data at the top here are what it will come up as in our WordPress to style each of the posts in whichever way we'd like. The search page is pretty much written for us by Bootstrap. The one thing that we are able to do is say what it does when it is right and what it's wrong. So if the query is the same as the post that you're looking for, then guess what? it displays the searched items and you can click on it to find out more. Otherwise, it's going to come up with an error page and an error message saying there was no results for you, unfortunately. Finally, the category page is laid out pretty much the same as the index page, obviously with the main exception of the carousel. However, there is also the addition of this title as well, letting people know which category they are on. Finally, we're going to have a look before the CSS at the JavaScript. So this tiny top bit here is just the event listener for the preloader that says that when the page is loaded up, disappear. So all of this underneath it has been not written by me. It's just some default information that I needed to include in order to be able to add that event listener to my navbar. So underneath it, we've got some information here that allows the page to know where it is. So after this certain point, at 100 pixels down, it adds the class to it, and therefore it's going to change some of the features of the navbar. I go on, finally, to our CSS, which is our bread and butter. This is pretty much where most of the information is happening on our page. This whole part that I've highlighted here, this is just some standard things that you want to include to allow for your page to be available or accessible on different kinds of software, and also it gets rid of some of the annoying things to do with HTML, things like margin, padding, etc., being a standardized way. So then we import this font, which we want to use for the rest of our page, and we will implement that in the body. It's worth mentioning this sticky class, because this is the one that we used to change the navbar using JavaScript, and also there is a little fade out that we use for the preloader. There's quite a lot of hover that I use in here. It just means that when you hover over things, people know that they are interacting. So you've got quite a lot of styling in terms of height, just to get like one standardized size for each card, so it doesn't look a little bit weird where one has got a little bit more text than the other. You've also got image height as well to be standardized regardless. We've got some footer styling here as well. We decided to make it fixed, so it was constantly at the bottom of the page. However, it looked a little bit in your face, so this is where we changed the opacity of it, so when you hover over it, if you want to find out more, it turns up. Otherwise, it's quite subtle. Now we get to the app media styling. So this one here is for each individual post, and we've used it for every time that it goes down to a certain screen size. So we've made it so the width is increased, the height is increased also, so it fits a phone screen and looks a little bit more natural. So if we go a little bit further down, now we get to the animations that we've used for each and every main page. So we've used different timings basically to allow for it to come in at different times, and also percentages within the keyframes to ensure that it doesn't all start at the same time. These top ones are what determine how many cards can be displayed at any one row. We use the max width justifier to make sure that it's all in the center, and when it gets to a different size, it will shrink down so there's only two, for example, there. And we go a little bit further down, this is where it all becomes justified as the card size. Thank you for watching my video. I've been Robbie Campbell and you've been the viewers, and thank you.